Hi, good morning, everyone. Hope that you're all doing well today. My name is Charlie. I'm a senior at the University of Notre Dame who's been debating competitively since high school. Used to compete on the WIDPISC circuit in U.S. boarding school debate, and have continued that a little bit in college. And today we're going to be going through just kind of a real basic debate bootcamp refresher, going to be going over the format for the tournament that's going to come up, as well as reviewing a few tips and strategies to help you be as competitive as you possibly can be, um, moving forward into the tournament. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A section of the chat. I'll try to respond to those either throughout the presentation or at the end in a dedicated Q&A session. And we're going to be breaking up this presentation into two parts today. So going to be going through a little bit of the presentation, probably going to take 10 to 15 minutes to break in between, and then continuing onward from there. But please don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have any questions, and we'll just jump right in. So we're going to break this down into four parts today. First of all, we're going to be going over the competition format. After that, we're going to be going over fundamentals of debate, talking a little bit about the best preparation strategies and how to make the most of that prep time, and then leaving a couple of minutes at the end for some questions and answers if you have any. So first of all, going to be going through the format for the specific tournament that's coming up right now. But under the International Parliamentary Debate Competition format, before we go into that, I think we want to have a discussion about what parliamentary debate is, just to refresh our recollection a little bit and how it differs from other forms of debate. But what really differentiates parliamentary extemporaneous debate from other forms you might encounter on the international circuit, policy, public forum, is that parliamentary debate is extemporaneous, right? So what that means is you're dynamically responding in real time to questions as they're posed to you, and that means that parliamentary debate is typically very research poor. There's a vague evidentiary standard. What that means is that anyone's able to participate in parliamentary debate. You don't need any sort of specific or specialized knowledge, and the standard everybody should be able to engage in is what a well-read person should know. So both sides have to have grounds. So on either side of the motion, which is just a fancy word for the topic that you're going to be arguing in a debate, both sides have to have a winnable case. So you need to be debating something that's controversial. There isn't a correct answer one way or the other, and both sides could reasonably put forward a case that is convincing. In other words, the topics have no one correct answer, and the side that knows more about a topic is very likely to win that round. And essentially, knowledge really matters in parliamentary debate. The more that you bring to the table, the more general reading you do, the more likely it's going to be that you're going to be able to engage with the question and better persuade your audience. So the side with the larger intellectual toolkit is most likely to win. And that can include many things. It could be ideas, theories, the methods of analysis that you bring to the table, or other analytical tricks that we're going to go through in this presentation today. So under the format that you're going to be debating for the tournament, there are two sides around the topics that you're going to be debating. There is an affirmative side and a negative side. Sometimes the affirmative side is called the government. Sometimes the negative side is called the opposition. It depends on what debate circuit you're involved in. But essentially, one team of two people, those labeled A and B in this diagram, are trying to affirm the motion. They're trying to argue in favor of whatever topic is being presented, to say that the topic that's been presented is correct. That the organization that's debating, that the body, Parliament in the case of the original parliamentary debates, is trying to affirm the motion, say that something should be done. Again, they're sometimes called the government. The other side, on the other side of the motion, is the negative side. So what they're trying to do is oppose the motion, while the affirmative side has a burden to argue in favor of what's being proposed. The negative side doesn't have the same burden. The negative side doesn't have to prove anything. The negative side just has to contradict what the affirmative side is putting forward. And the specific debate structure and format for the competition that you're going to be participating in goes as follows. The affirmative side speaks first. That's the A speaker. There's going to be, for several minutes before the negative has a chance to put forward their case, make arguments rebutting what the first speaker has said on the affirmative side. The affirmative side then gets to speak again, that B speaker, before the negative side gets to contradict what they've said. The negative speaker who opened the case then speaks one more time before going back to the affirmative, who gets to make closing arguments and rebuttals. So this is a structure, but essentially goes affirmative, negative, affirmative, negative, negative, affirmative. And it's important to note also that the first affirmative speaker is only going to be trying to put forward the case, so they're not trying to contradict anything that the negative side has said, because of course they haven't made arguments yet. The first negative's job is also to put forward their own positive arguments against the resolution that's being debated. Although, because they have 5 minutes to speak, there's also a little bit of time for the first negative to begin to rebut what the first affirmative has said. But if you're the first speaker on either the affirmative side or the first speaker on the negative side, it's really important that you don't try to get bogged down in rebutting what the other side has said, but really establish what you're saying and make it very clear precisely what you're arguing for, what your actual arguments are, instead of why the other side is wrong. The second speaker for both the affirmative and the negative has the opportunity to then make some rebuttals. So the job of the first affirmative speaker is to make arguments in favor of the motion. The job of the first negative speaker is to make arguments against them. And the job of the second affirmative and the second negative speaker is going to be primarily rebuttal. So if you are the second affirmative speaker, you're following the first negative speaker. And a lot of what you're doing is going to be rebuilding the case of the first affirmative, but also saying why you think that the first negative speaker is wrong, what flaws you see in the reasoning they've put forward. It's the same is true of the second negative speaker. It's primarily the second negative speaker's job to contradict and rebut what the affirmative side has said in their case. And yes, participants will know which side they're on before the debate. So we're going to go through prep time as well in a later section of the presentation. As of right now, just going through the format, but it's important to note that in advance of the debate, you're going to have a period of dedicated preparation time where you're going to know whether you are the affirmative side, whether you're the negative side, as well as what the topic is going to be. And that's going to allow you the opportunity to construct your case. And then it's going to lead to better arguments being made during the time to present your arguments. But again, the job of the first speaker is going to be to present the case. The job of the second speaker is going to be to rebut the case of the opposite sides. And the job of the reply speaker, and this is the first speaker is going to get an opportunity to speak again for 4 minutes at the very end, is going to be to summarize the debate. Not only are they replying to arguments that have been put forward on the table, wrap up the very last of the rebuttal period, and make any final arguments, but it's really their job to make sense of the round for the judge, to tell the judge what's gone on and why their side has won, in light of both the positive arguments that they've made, as well as, in addition to the arguments that have been made, why the other side is wrong. But again, there are very specific goals for each speech. The Prime Minister is the first affirmative speaker because they are presenting the case for the government. Again, it's their job only to present that case, not to make any arguments against the other side. The Leader of the Opposition, who is the first negative speaker, it's just a fancy term for that, is going to be Leader of the Opposition is going to be adapting their case to the Prime Minister's constructive, so you need to listen very carefully to what's been said on the affirmative side, in addition to presenting the opposition case and beginning to reply to the government's case. But again, replying to the government's case shouldn't be the primary object of that first constructive speech. The job of the first constructive speech should just be laying out the arguments for the motion. After all the constructives have been presented, the second speakers are going to be able to come forward, offer rebuttals and counter arguments, And then it's going to be the job of the first constructive speaker to deliver the final speech on both the affirmative and the negative side. And what they're going to be doing is summarizing everything that's gone on in the debate. And also important to note with the first speaker, so that's first constructive on both the affirmative and the negative side, is that they need to very clearly establish definitions in your debate. So we're going to go over this in a little bit more detail when we go through motions and how to think about motions, those actual topics and building blocks of debate. But it's very important that if you are the first speaker, you need to very clearly define the terms that you're talking about. That way, if you have any dispute with the other side about what the terms are, what the definitions are, they're resolved early on and actual argument is allowed to flourish before presenting your arguments. But definitions need to come before arguments in order to make sure that the debate functions well. The second speaker's job is, of course, a little bit different. The second speaker is going to be primarily focused on rebuttals and supporting their partner's arguments. Generally, you want to limit the arguments, and we'll go over debate theory and strategy for engaging with the motions, again, in the later section of this presentation. But you generally want to keep your arguments to 2 or 3 points, only because you're dealing with a limited amount of time, and it's going to make it much more pleasant. And finally, in the rebuttal speaker section or the very final speaker section, again, you're going to continue, if you are that speaker, you're going to want to continue to offer rebuttals or show how your points directly contradict or clash with the other side's points, but also, and this is even more important, really provide a summary of the debate so that the judge understands what's gone on, because the judge needs to understand a standard to judge the debate. Arguments have been made on both sides have probably made some pretty good points, but really where debates are won and lost is in this final speech where the speaker has an opportunity to say, even though the other side has made some good points, ours are more compelling for these reasons.